Welcome to the Advertising Forum. This is episode 3 of our SMB series, sponsored by Vibe.
Today we have Sophia Popova, partner at Summit Partners, with us to talk about venture capitalists' perspective on SMBs. Sophia, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So Sophia, from your perspective, which is a VC's perspective, is very different than the prior guests that we've had. What makes the SMB market particularly attractive for venture capital investment?
Yeah, I'd say there has never been a better time to be serving the SMB market. If you look at the data, there was a record-breaking 5.5 million new businesses that were started in 2023. It's incredible. It's mind-blowing. And that surpassed the prior record back in 2021 when it was like 5.4 million. So it's a massive TAM with a lot of businesses that are constantly coming up and blossoming, which is quite exciting. And then when you further segment those businesses, it's interesting because there's a sub-segment that we call the solopreneur segment. So like solo proprietors, which are growing even faster. So both solopreneurs and traditional SMBs, they need access to software because they don't have the ability to hire marketing teams, sales teams, so on and so forth to run their business, which makes it a very right place for a software vendor to grow. So the market is huge, but that's not all. I think the cost to actually start a business has also plummeted. If you look at just the back-end support services you need, Shopify can build your website if you're an e-commerce merchant, or Wix or Squarespace, or if you're drop shipping, Amazon has services for you. On the front end side of things, how do you get new customers? You can organically create an audience through tools like Klaviyo, or you can acquire an audience through visual first media like Vibe. And I think the ability to do that in a really low cost way is creating this massive ecosystem for SMBs. I'd have to caveat that SMB software traded at a discount. Think like Salesforce versus HubSpot. HubSpot traditionally traded at a discount because it was viewed as being a higher churn, less predictable kind of software vendor. But I think the gap between SMB software and enterprise software has really, really diminished. And the reason for that is twofold. One is predictability. So if your revenue is very, very predictable and recurring and you have low churn, you trade at a premium. And I think for the first time, we're seeing SMB businesses really nail the predictability element of their business. And they're able to say, yeah, half of our customers churn away and don't use us after 6 months, but the other half that do actually double and triple and quadruple their spend. And the companies that are able to prove that out are seen as being very, very, very valuable because they really have hit product market fit with a certain cohort. And then when you think about scalability, same thing.
Yeah, you mentioned so many stats. I mean, the barriers to entry is so important for people to be able to create and spin up those solopreneurs or those companies that they're starting. What are some key market trends or data points that really underscore the growth potential of these SMB-focused technologies?
I'd say that the biggest trend is around kind of what I mentioned around the cost to start a business. So it used to be, believe it or not, a 6-figure endeavor on average to start a company. And the cost to start a business today is in the hundreds of dollars a month when you add up all of the various tools that you need to incorporate a business and then run that business on an ongoing basis. And that cost discrepancy is what's really ignited this market in a very special and meaningful way. And it's transferred the amount of money that small businesses can invest from doing the boring back-end stuff to doing the more interesting, creative go-to-market stuff.
Where do you see the biggest challenges, especially as it relates to advertising in the TV or CTV space?
Yeah, I'd say there are 3 big challenges. One is it's a highly fragmented market. And there's multifaceted needs to make sure that you're solving kind of a generic problem. You want to be solving revenue acquisition for your customer. You don't want to be solving a tertiary issue. I think the companies that are going after new sales, new revenue, customer acquisition, or even customer retention are going to be likely the most valuable. If you look at the cost to acquire a customer, that has grown exponentially over the last couple of decades because it's really controlled by the sort of oligopolistic powers of Google and Facebook and a number of other vendors online. And so if you can break out of that ecosystem and invest in other sources of marketing and customer acquisition, you're going to get a lot more performant customer acquisition channel. And Vibe is like squarely in that particular ecosystem. I'd say in general, also content creation costs are really, really high. It's hard to hire a studio and all of the editing and the equipment required to have high fidelity content. And so any tool that is able to generate content at a low cost, but not just generate it in an AI form, but actually embed it in your workflow, that is also highly valuable. And I think also the last kind of big challenge is that the best tools in the world are very, very expensive. Like the Trade Desk has a minimum, a 6 or 7 figure minimum to be able to use it. And it's not that they don't want to serve small customers. It's just that they haven't figured out a way to service them profitably. And so there's a whole suite of issues that they can't tackle for their customers because the customers are challenging to serve. And so some vendors like Vibe and others have really been able to solve the problems of SMBs in a multifaceted way and in a high margin way. And that's what kind of sets them apart.
It was really helpful to lay it out in the three steps that you just did, Sophia. Help us understand, as a VC, when you are making the investments on behalf of Summit partners, when you're making the investments on behalf of your LPs, how do you evaluate whether a startup, how it truly addresses the unique pain points of SMBs? Because you're obviously talking to so many different founders every single day. Help us understand, help our audience understand, like just what you go through to figure out what those pain points are and how those tech startups solve them.
Definitely. The number one thing is to talk to customers. Don't take anyone's word for it. It really talk to the customers who actually use the product. And I'll tell you, I hear people, they're very honest. They'll say, this actually drives my business. This brings revenue to me every single day. And when I hear customers saying that over and over again, I know I've met a very, very special company. So that's really, really the most important thing. I don't rely on my own opinions or views about a business. I just try to survey the actual market. I'd say also, financials don't lie. I have the opinion that high growth, capital efficient businesses are the most certain way to drive long lasting equity value over any market cycle. So maybe we're in the boom times, maybe we're in the bust times. But if you focus on durable growth, that's incredibly hard to find. And if you do find it, we really double down on it. And then finally, I talk to, specifically in the ad tech source space, I talk to agencies because the channels know what actually works because they have the means to actually test it out. So I talk to end customers, I talk to the channel vendors, and then I look at the financials, and the financials don't lie.
It's a great call with the financials. No, numbers never lie. They always tell the actual truth.
Yeah.
With that said, how do you make sure that your companies are maintaining just product market fit or PMF throughout the process when they're maniacally focused on the SMB market?
I'd say the number one thing is avoiding feature creep. Companies sometimes will get the push to start building for enterprise customers. But my general rule of thumb is only build what you can monetize 5 times over. It's kind of like that old thing, like for like personal finance, only buy a luxury good if you can buy it 5 times. So if you can't sell it to 5 different customers, don't build it. And I think that creates repeatability and scalability in your model inherently. And the second thing is to really focus on churn and continuous product innovation, specifically for what I call the product North Star. Product North Star is not necessarily what most of your customers are using, but it's the set of features that your most performant cohort is using. So that's the cohort of your customers that are doubling, tripling, quadrupling over time. If you keep building for that segment, it will hopefully grow and overtake the overall market. So that's kind of how I view that aspect of it.
Super helpful. What trends or opportunities do you genuinely believe are going to shape the future for SMB-centric solutions? Because before we started talking, you were telling us about just some of the amazing investments. Summit Partners had been so early to fantastic MarTech and AdTech companies that many of our viewers are going to be familiar with, whether it was Klaviyo, StackAdapt, the list continues. But would love to hear just 30 seconds or less, your guidance, advice of what you think is going to shape the future when it comes to SMB-centric solutions.
I think, number one, employee count doesn't define big anymore. It's all about your audience and being able to harness the power of that audience very efficiently.
Great call.
And number two is, I think websites matter less and less because your audience is across a very fragmented ecosystem of mobile and other platforms. And so audience matters more than websites. So think about how you want to drive your traffic to maximize conversions. It's not the traditional click SEO cycle anymore.
Sophia, this has been great.
Yeah, this has been great, Sophia. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for joining us on this SMB series. And thank you to Vibe for sponsoring. Again, thank you. And thank you for your insights today.
Thank you. Thank you both for hosting.